Distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, now we will start session 4. My name is Hyun Jae-sung, head of the Law of the Sea History Center of the Korea Maritime Institute. I will serve as a moderator today. On behalf of the Korea Maritime Institute, the second main sponsor of this conference, I would like to thank all of you who participate in this conference, especially the speakers for taking the time to make a wonderful presentation. Today, we are very fortunate in having two eminent scholars. Actually, it is a great honor for me to have a rector of Islamic University of Indonesia, Professor Nandang Sustilino, and Professor Sri Watini, who chaired session 1 as a present in my session. Please step up on the stage. This session is the scope to session 3. Because of limited time, some of you may have heard some incomplete commercials. Please release your energy in this session. As a moderator, I have to control the allocated time. We have 90 minutes for this session. So each speaker will have 20 minutes in maximum for presentation. We are, of course, we are already behind the schedule almost 30 minutes, so we can make the time to have dinner on time. So after finishing all the presentations, we will have about 30 minutes discussion. Speakers will be advised when we have 2 minutes remaining. Please keep to your allocated time. With that, I would like to invite Professor Sri Watini first, following the listening in the program. I would like to invite Professor Sri Watini. You have a floor.
Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. It's my pleasure to be here to see all of the professors here, but also professionals so that I can learn a lot from the others. Okay, my topic here, I hope that it will not make all of you sleepy. Okay, this is the rest of our energy in this day. My presentation is regarding the implementation of Ramsar Convention. Maybe all of us has already recognized what is Ramsar Convention. It's the convention to protect the wetland. And as the outline of my presentation, first is the introduction and the function of the wetland to the human being and also to the environment itself. And how about the implementation of Ramsar Convention in Indonesia? About the national regulation and institutional body and all the strategy and the program to protect and manage the Indonesian wetland. And it will come to the challenges and also the opportunities, and the end is about the conclusion. Okay, if we talk about the global warming is become the problem of each state in the world, because each state in the world contribute to the global warming. Even the developing countries or developed countries or least developed countries. Maybe as one of the example is Indonesia. Indonesia as developing countries also contribute a lot to the global warming because there are many cases in Indonesia regarding the forest burning. And maybe one of the worst case in Indonesia happened in 2015. Then there is the forest burning and also caused the smoke come into the Singapore and also to Malaysia. So what's happened here, under the international law, actually the Indonesian government has already violated the security principle. Because as a state, we have to maintain a good neighborhood principle, but in the case, we have already caused the environmental pollution, especially the air pollution. And if Singapore would like to sue Indonesia, actually there is the legal basis, but fortunately we have friends here, so that Singapore and Malaysia didn't sue Indonesian government. And what happened to Indonesia, actually according to the Indonesian Ministry of Environment and Forestry, Indonesia has already emitted approximately 18,000 million or 1.1 billion metric ton of carbon dioxide. So this because of the forest burning in Indonesia. Even the land forest or the wetland, for example, the mangrove area or the peatland in Indonesia, that we often facing some of the problem in Indonesia and cause the emission into the air. These are some of the pictures that I took from the internet. That's what is happening in Indonesia here. There's forest burning almost every year happening in Indonesia. And Indonesia actually can be classified as the mega biodiversity in the world, that we reach of biodiversity, but in Indonesia also the degradation of the biodiversity are also quite huge. Because why? That's the land conversion of Indonesia. Then the government give the license to the companies to make some kind of the land conversion in Indonesia has already decreased about biodiversity and also has already damaged the forest environment in Indonesia. And when the forest, especially with the wetland, like the mangrove, so and the peatlands has already damaged by the activities of the industry or even from the local communities. So they have already damaged about the function of the wetland for the human being itself. There are some functions of the wetlands that I cannot mention in detail, but some of them that wetlands are among the most productive ecosystem in the world, comparable to land forest and coral reef. An immense variety of species of micro plant, insect, amphibian, reptile, bird, fish, and so on. And those unique living creatures that we can find in the wetland, we cannot find in the other areas. So that this is a unique thing that we can find on this kind of ecosystem, and we need how to protect them. And Indonesia is not only the parties of the Ramsar Convention, but we also the parties of the Biodiversity Convention. So we cannot make some kind of isolation. Then the obligation of the Ramsar Convention is not only an isolated matter, but we also refer to the other convention that Indonesia also legally binding to perform the obligation. So there's a close relationship here for to protect the wetland in Indonesia, and also in the same time we perform the obligation by the Biodiversity Convention that we have an ex situ and in situ conservation of the biodiversity. These are the skip on the function. And what is Ramsar Convention here? The Ramsar Convention was adopted in 1971 in Iran. So because that the international community recognized that the function of wetland is very important for the human being, and we have to maintain and preserve this kind of environment. So that's why they make such kind of agreement, international agreement, how we are going to cooperate each other to manage the wetland in each state. The convention mission is about the conservation and wise use of wetland through local and national action and international cooperation. So what I would like to emphasize here, that the cooperation here is between state and state, that the cooperation between state and state will not be workable, will not be effective if there is no local implementation and if there is no national regulation or to support the international cooperation. So what happened in Indonesia, that Indonesia is the parties of the convention here, and we have already ratified the convention. If we have already ratified the convention, so we are legally binding to all the obligations that are stipulated on the Ramsar Convention. There are three pillars of the convention here. The first is work toward wise use of all their wetland. Means here that each state, each contracting parties has to manage and also to protect the wetland and utilize in a wise manner. So how to make it that Indonesia has already performing some of the obligation how to make it in use manner, but somehow there are also a lot of violence in Indonesia, and you maybe see from the website that forest building in Indonesia and land conversion in Indonesia, like the palm plantation, we are the number 2 in the world as the producer of the palm oil. So this is also one of the cause why the conversion of the land in Indonesia is very often, and how easily the government of Indonesia fits that kind of license. In this case, I refer to the sustainable development principle that even though Indonesia also adopted the principle in our national regulation, but as mentioned in the Act number 32/2009 regarding the environmental protection, and one of the principles here is about sustainable development. And how the three pillars that I previously asked the question that in Indonesia also that economic development must become the priority rather than about the environmental protection. But regarding the public participation and also the social development, now is tends to increase the awareness of the society. And the second one, the obligation of the contracting parties here is to determine about the Ramsar site. At least one, that contracting parties has to determine one Ramsar site. And in Indonesia, the government of Indonesia has already determined 7 Ramsar sites in Indonesia. Maybe someday you would like to come over to this Ramsar site of Indonesia. The first one is Rambut Island Life Reserve in the north of Jakarta. Is one of the Ramsar site, and you can go there to sightseeing. The second one, we have Berbah National Park in Jambi. And the next one, Sembilang National Park in South Sumatra. There are a lot of birds there. And we have also here Sentara Black National Park in Pontianak, Kalimantan. And the others, we have Rawa Auto Watu Mahir in Kendari. So this is very beautiful if you would like to come someday. And the last year, we have also National Park Wasur in Papua. So not the last, but this is the second last. And the last, we have Tanjung Puting. So Tanjung Puting is in National Park in Kalimantan, Southern on Borneo. So the orangutan here is become one of the icons that has to be preserved. And we also have cooperation with WWF how to protect the orangutan in Borneo. I think that's how about our challenge? What is the problem of Indonesian government how to make this kind of sorry that I miss. I lost my sorry. I so let's we have already ratified this convention in 1990. So let's we perform our application. Yeah, I will continue while waiting for this next slide. That's what has been done by the Indonesian government after we ratified in 1991. So because we recognize about the condition of Indonesian wetland. Indonesia has the world's largest mangroves, around 27% in the world of the total mangrove, or 75% of the total area of mangrove in Southeast Asia. So we have already discussed about this, and we already determined about the Ramsar site here. Okay. And what happened after we have already made such kind of the Ramsar site, that Indonesian government, of course, has to cooperate with the other state, because how to maintain and also how to preserve the Ramsar site, we need also a lot of budget, and also the scientific skill, or how that's the scientists also have the Indonesian government how to make such kind of strategy, and how to regarding how to preserve and maintain the environment in the wetland. And one of the preventive approach that has been done by the government of Indonesia, in order not to repeat again what is happening in Borneo in 2015, so that as a preventive approach, that Indonesia government here has already established about Indonesian agency regarding to the how to protect the wetland. So we also cooperate with World Resource Institute. This is the Indonesian Spot the Best Restoration Agency, to achieve restoration target to significantly reduce carbon emission. Because Indonesia also is the party of the United Nations Framework Convention of the Climate Change. So Indonesia also has the obligation how to reduce about the emission. And these are the challenges that facing by the Indonesian government. In order to maintain and also to protect the wetland in Indonesia, land conversion has become the most problem in Indonesia. And the second one is about the budget. Also, we need a lot of budget how to preserve the environment and also how to protect the wetland. And the other side also, the most important thing here, but the big awareness of the business owner and the society to participate in the protection of the wetland. And what are the opportunities? The opportunities that we can do how to manage our environment, especially in the wetland area. So that there are some international cooperation with the government of Indonesia, first with the Center for International Forest Research, and the other World Wildlife Fund, and also International Union of Forest Research Organization. This organization actually promotes the global cooperation and forest-related research and enhance the understanding of ecological, economic, and social aspects of forests and trees, and disseminate scientific knowledge to stakeholders and decision makers, and contribute to the forest policy and on the ground of forest management. So the main subject of cooperation that we expect that Indonesian government also will get some kind of contribution from the international organization. It's not only about the knowledge and how the strategy and even for the technology, but we also can cooperate in the financial support how to protect and also to preserve the wetland. And my conclusion here that the implementation of Ramsar Convention in Indonesia in some extent has already successfully to protect and manage the wetland in Indonesia. Well, especially of course in the second Ramsar site that we have already developed many kind of program how to manage this kind of Ramsar site. But on the other hand, especially on the peatlands, that there are often some cases happen that is about the peatland burning, which is intentionally or sometimes unintentionally. So those kind of matters become the obstacle of Indonesian government how to implement the Ramsar Convention in Indonesia. Even though that Indonesia also participate in the Indonesia. I think it's all my presentation. Thank you very much.
We have listened to Professor Sriwakini, how the Ramsar Treaty is implemented in Indonesia under the particulars of the convention, and what is the biggest challenge in Indonesia is facing. Next, I would like to ask Professor Nanda Susturino to speak.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, moderator, Mr. Yun Daison. My topic is harmonization of world trade organization agreements in national law of Indonesia. First, the WTO agreement has become the main law governing international trade globally at the moment. It has been ratified by 164 countries, including developing, and also least developed countries. As a consequence, these countries have been bound by the agreement, and therefore they have to harmonize their national law in order to be inconsistent with the agreement. Indonesia has ratified the WTO agreement by Law Number 7, 1994, and elaborated in other national laws and regulations. Law Number 10 of 1995 on customs, law related to intellectual property rights, law on investment, and law on trade and their implementing regulations are to mention some of national laws and regulations. Indonesia has also involved in dispute settlements under the auspices of the WTO dispute settlement body of the WTO agreement. As of 2018, Indonesia has involved in 30 cases as complainants, respondents, and as third party. The experience of Indonesia in harmonizing the laws and regulations and in the involvement of Indonesia in dispute settlements show its general consistency, and to some extent its inconsistency and its potentially inconsistency, and hence its necessity to readjust them with the WTO agreement. In this presentation, I would like, first of all, discuss about the WTO in brief, very brief, and then after that, I would like to discuss about some laws and regulations, whether or not inconsistent or persistent with the WTO agreement. First, the WTO in brief. I would like to jump to the principles, main principles of the WTO. The first one is most favored nations, and the second one is national treatment, protection through tariff binding, fair competition, prohibitions of quantitative restrictions, waiver and emergency restrictions of import, and exception for regional trade agreements. Consistent and inconsistent will be seen from these principles. Whether our law, our national laws, are inconsistent or consistent with these principles. At the moment, we are fortunate in Indonesia, very lucky, because now we have the comprehensive law on trade, comprising both trade law in national and international level. However, in these presentations, I would like only to discuss about law number 7, year 2014 on trade in general, and then specifically I would like to discuss about specific chapter related to international trade. Law number 7, year 2014 on trade, governs trade in general, both national and international. International trade is governed in Chapter 5, in Article 38 to Article 54. In this chapter, the scopes of international trade governs two things. The first one is policies on export and import, and the second one, controls on export and imports. The scopes of international trade policies and controls propose to enhance competitiveness of export products of Indonesia, and then to enhance and expanding market access in foreign markets, and to enhance the capacities of exporters and importers to be reliable business actors. International trade policies include increasing quantity and kinds or types, and also value added of export products, harmonizing standards and procedures of trade activities with trade partners, enhancing international trade institutions, developing infrastructures and facilities supporting international trade, and protecting and securing national interests from negative impacts of international trade. While controls of international trade include first, licensing, the second one, standards, and the last one is prohibitions and restrictions. And specifically about international trade in services, first, it's related to cross-border supply, consumption abroad, commercial presence, and movement of natural persons. In this law, especially in Chapter 5, also governs about government's intervention in international trade, which is something very crucial, and sometimes it is debatable. This is related to government may intervene in policies of international trade, and then also to avoid market distortions as a result of trade domination causing unfair competition, and then national interest based as the aim of economic policy, including that of free trade policy. through international trade cooperations with other countries and international and regional organizations. The international trade cooperation is conducted through international agreements. And in this law, the international agreements needs an approval of Parliament. Thus, international trade is one of the important aspects of regulating trade in Indonesia. Now, I'd like to discuss about consistent and inconsistent in our national law. But of course, I only give examples, some examples about consistent and inconsistent. First, let's discuss about the main law of trade, especially regulating international trade at the moment. That is law number 7 of 2014. Just discussed. First, government officials frequently state that we don't apply free trade, while on the other hand, if we have already been member of the WTO, it means that we apply free trade. And that's why our government in this law also apply intervention. It means that free trade is combined with interventions of government of Indonesia. So it means that there is no full free trade. And also, it may be very broad definitions about intervention, because intervention here is intended to protect national interests, while national interests can be defined as broad as possible. And then it is also debatable, and some experts said that this law, especially governing international trade, is in contradiction with some provisions of the Indonesian law itself. The first one is that in international trade law, regulated in this law, it is stated that international trade agreements must be submitted at least 90 days to the Parliament. It means that first, it contradicts with the Article 11 of Constitution, in which the authority of making treaty is in the hands of the government, not in the hands of Parliament. The second one, there are some treaties or international agreements that needs no approval from the Parliament. I mean that some treaties or some agreements can be prevailed after signing, not after ratification. So this law prohibits this kind of agreement. And then also, this law is against national law, because in accordance with law on treaty, international treaty, has its own procedures. So if so long as the law on international treaty does not or is not reformed, then the law is still prevailing. And also, this law relates to the cancellations of treaty. while in the treaty itself, you cannot cancel unilaterally. If the treaty will be cancelled, then there should be the approval of other members. That's all for law 2014. So in general, this law is consistent with the government agreement, but in some respects, there are some aspects with this proposals are inconsistent. The second one, I would like to relate to higher education. In higher education, as part of the GATS, General Agreement on Trade in Services, Indonesia has already signed initial offer. In initial offer, there is a possibility for foreign higher education providers to establish a university or higher education institution in Indonesia, or it's called as a commercial presence. The second one, in the higher education, there is also law on investment, and also it is strengthened by law number 12 of 2012, in which the commercial presence can be established in Indonesia with several requirements. And now the ownership in Indonesia, not only 49%, but now it has already been 67%. So if Korean universities, for example, want to establish a university in Indonesia, then it can have the ownership until 67%. So it means that in the higher education, in the GATS, our higher education has been liberalized. And the last one is about banking. In banking, it is more liberal, because not only 49%, but also 51%, and now 99%. It means that foreign parties can have ownership of the banks in Indonesia until 99%. And the second one, in Indonesia also applies a single license. It means that if foreign banking in Indonesia want to establish banks with several subsidiaries and brands, then the license only one. While in other countries, for example, in ASEAN countries like Malaysia or Singapore, there must be multiple licenses. So if they want to establish new brands, new subsidiaries, then there must be a new license. While in Indonesia, it's only one, a single license. And as a consequence, at the moment, foreign banks, the presence of foreign banks at the moment is 43% of all the banks in Indonesia. So it means, once again, in the banks sector, our country, Indonesian countries, has liberalized this sector in accordance pursuant to the WTO agreement. And also, there are policies and regulations on national car programs. This is the case, the first case in Indonesia or involving Indonesia. In the past, our government wanted to establish a national car program, and because there are some WTO principles that are violated by Indonesia at the time, then Indonesia was brought to the dispute settlement body by the time United States and European communities at the time. And Indonesia was stated to cancel the policies. And other laws like law on horticulture, law on husbandry and animal health, law on food, law on protection and enhancements of farmers, and law number 7 of on trade, just discussed, are laws that are brought by other countries, especially in this case United States and New Zealand, to the WTO. United States and New Zealand claims against various import licensing for horticulture and cattle, and then they also claims for Indonesia restricting free trade through quantitative restrictions, and then also apply minimum price, period of import and licensing, and the last one is import prohibitions for all trade from United States. This means that in the practice or in the experience of Indonesia implementing the WTO agreements, in one side, we are bound by the WTO agreements, and we are abide by the WTO agreements, and we are consistent with the agreement. But on the other side, some laws and some provisions are inconsistent, and they are brought by other countries to the WTO dispute settlement body. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you so much for giving now that we have heard from our panelists, you know, very interesting for us to hear the presentations. We shall now proceed to the discussion. I hope questioners to identify themselves and to give their comments. I just showed that we asked them to allow the presenters to this public forum. I'm sure that many of you in the audience have questions for panelists. And now the floor is open. Please raise your hand and ask questions to panelists. Okay, sir.
Yes, my question is addressed to Anda. The issue of banking industry, the liberalization. My question to you is whether it is because Indonesia wants to liberalize its banking industry so that the foreign can have 99% of shares in a local bank, or is it because the government does not want to bail out if there is a problem in a certain bank, because experiencing in Indonesia over and over again where bank has failed, and every time bank has failed, then the government has to bail out for the bank. So by having a 99% or majority shares of the local bank owned by a quote-unquote foreign parties, then the government may think that if the bank failed, then it is the responsibility of the foreign bank. Yes, it seems that Indonesia has liberalized its banking industry. Nonetheless, if you look at that reason, do you think this is something that is reasonable, or you think this is unreasonable? Still, Indonesia is liberalizing its banking industry. Thank you very much.
I would like to collect some more questions and answer presentation.
Yes. Yes, my first question is for Nanda. You indicated that if if there was an inconsistency between the WTO or the Indonesian treaty obligations and Indonesian law, that other countries could go through the dispute resolution process. Is there in Indonesia the ability to challenge the law by an Indonesian citizen, for example, based on inconsistency with the treaty? And then I can ask the same question about the Ramsar Treaty to Ibu Tini. What can private organizations or NGOs challenge in Indonesia violations of the Ramsar Treaty, or is it required that other treaty nations bring it to an international dispute resolution, or can be handled nationally? Thank you very much. Very interesting presentation.
Does anyone have something? Yeah. Yes.
Yes, I have one question for each panelist. For the presentation on the Ramsar Convention, I really found it interesting and very informational. But I was just curious to know whether there are some measures specifically taken by the Indonesian government to incorporate the interests of the major players in this topic, which are timber industries and the agricultural industries or actors. Probably they are the most powerful economic actors that may have a specific influence on the protection of these wetlands. And I just wonder whether the governments were accommodating of their interests, or they were just going ahead with what they have decided to do without consideration of the interest of those major economic players. And as for the discussion on the Indonesian law in relation to these WTO rules, I also found it very interesting and very informational. And I have one question about the possibility of having some disputes, especially when it comes to the investor-state disputes. For example, when a foreign investor makes an investment in certain Indonesian domestic industries, such as educational sector, and they have some of the foreign investors start to argue that they have suffered because of the change in on the policy, Indonesian government's policy. And if a standardized procedure were to be applied, probably there would be some kind of bilateral treaty concluded between Indonesia and the other state party in relation to the protection of the investment and the procedures to deal with the investor statement disputes. I just wonder if the same standardized procedure is applicable in the possible dispute between foreign investors and the Indonesian governments.
Okay, let's hear answer from the now, Professor Nanda Sustinho has three questions from the floor, and two questions, 2 or 3 rounds.
Thank you for the questions and comments. First, Professor Hukum, I'm not sure about the reason why our banking sector is more liberal than other countries, even in ASEAN, like Singapore and also Malaysia. But our liberalizations of banking sector has already been started since the signing of initial in 1995. So since the effective of the WTO. So that's why I cannot answer these questions about the real reasons. But it's about 1995 is only 49%, and then up to 2005, 51%, and now it can be 90% in accordance with PBI, Peraturan Bank Indonesia 2012. So if there is a reason to avoid the bailout, maybe it's good, but it is also very risky, because if our country falls into crisis, then they will outflow, will run away to other countries. So our banking systems will be collapsed like in 1997, 1998. Thank you. And Mr. Kesson, the question is that whether Indonesian people have ability to challenge the law, Indonesian law, if it is inconsistent with the WTO. That's correct. Okay. There have already some challenges against liberalization, against the WTO, and also against, if I'm not mistaken, about ASEAN Economic Community, and by Constitutional Court that ASEAN Economic Community is not in contradiction with Constitution. It means that the membership of Indonesia in the WTO is not inconsistent with the Constitution. However, many people state that all aspects of the WTO agreements are inconsistent with our Constitution. But we hold, of course, the decisions of our constitutional law. And the last one about the protections of investors. We have many BIT. Maybe Professor Rikmanto is the expert about that. This BIT protects the investor. Even this is overprotective. Okay. But in our new investment law, so some protections also are given. For example, no, what we call it, no takeover of foreign companies without approvals of the companies, and also many more provisions protecting the investors. However, if they are still unsatisfied about Indonesian protection, then if they are private parties, can go to the arbitration, like what we call in Washington arbitration, exit. Okay. And if they are private parties against their partners of private parties also in Indonesia, then they can also go to the international arbitration, whether they are in Singapore, in Switzerland, and many more. It depends on the agreement in joint venture agreement, which forum that they can choose, whether arbitrations or the courts. So it's up to the parties to choose the courts or to choose other forums, alternative dispute resolution. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the question. First of all, I would like to address Mr. Christopher's question regarding how the role of the non-governmental organization in Indonesia to get involved in the monitoring and controlling about the wetland in Indonesia, because the wetland burning in Indonesia has become our custom every year. So, but actually, that the government of Indonesia has issued many regulations regarding also about how that the involvement of the community or government of Indonesia has already established the forest-based community. So that's the involvement of the community also to participate in the management of the forest, and especially here at forest, it is what we call as the mangrove forest, for example. And one of the most famous NGO in Indonesia, maybe you ever heard about WAHI, but he also get involved in the monitoring and controlling about environmental cases in Indonesia, and even sometimes he also sued the government of Indonesia that because they interest to protect the environment itself. And the other NGO in Indonesia also, maybe you ever heard about Palm Works. So that the NGO here is basically that they're more concerned about the protection of the peatland in Indonesia, because peatland in Indonesia is often converted into the palm plantation. So for the effort of the Indonesian government here also that cooperate together with the NGO. So NGO is not the enemies of the government, but now it's become the partner of the government. How we are going hand in hand to protect the forest, especially the mangrove forest and also the peatland in Indonesia. And we also need the supporting of the communities surrounding this area. And the second one, I would like also to address the question of professorship. First of all, that even though Indonesia has already ratified and become the parties of the Ramsar Convention, of course, there is the successful story and also the bad stories of Indonesia, how to implement the obligation of the Ramsar Convention. The successful stories, as I have already explained, that the bad thing, what the Indonesian government has not yet been able to perform the obligation here. That's how the Indonesian government would like to maintain the wise use of the wetland in Indonesia, because in the reality that the government of Indonesia is easily to give the license to the companies to convert the land from the peatland into the palm plantation area. So in this case, that I can conclude that the Indonesian government is much more priority in the economic growth rather than the protection of the peatland in Indonesia. And one of the thing that I also learned from the government of Indonesia, that's actually that's in the Ministry of Environment and Forestry in Indonesia here has already developed many programs how to protect the wetland in Indonesia. This is the effort of the government of Indonesia, how to protect and also in order to perform the obligation based on the Ramsar Convention. The first one also that the government of Indonesia has already established about the peatland agency. So in this agency itself is has this kind of task how to protect the wetland especially. And the second one also that the government of Indonesia also encourage the companies in Indonesia, which is much more their business related to the palm plantation, for example, that there is one of the requirement here. If you would like to export your product to the foreign countries, that you have to have a certification, sustainable certification of the farm. So if you don't have any kind of certification, so you are not going to be able to export your product. Means here with the economic instrument is much more effective rather than we give the sanction to the corporation. For example, we use or exercise the polluter pay principle. Means here the companies will be able to pay about the compensation. After that, they are going also to pollute. Even though that's the principle of polluter pay principle is not work that if you have paid the money that you have the right. It's not work like this. That how you would like to internalize the cost of the environment into the cost of the production. So it's what we would like to recognize about polluter pay principle. But this, if I compare with the economic instrument, such as the certification, it's much more workable and effective because what is the purpose of the companies here is to get benefit. If you are not going to be able to export your product to another country, you are not going to get a lot of benefit. So you are going to spend some money how to get the certification, and also on the other side, the side impact of obtaining the certification, you are also concerned to protect the environment, and you are going also to manage your plantation area in sustainable manner. And how about the membership of Indonesia to the International Timber Organization, Tropical Organization, ITTO. Indonesia also as the members of the International Tropical Timber Organization. So we also has already mixed national regulation how that's the companies here who work in the foresting area, especially for wood production, will become the raw material, for example, to produce paper or something else. So that's they have also to have some kind of certification. So this is the effort of the Indonesian government. Actually, that there are many effort has already done, but in the reality that there are also many violations which is done by the companies. This maybe my answer. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And we shall now proceed to the second round of discussion. Are there any questions? Yes, Professor.
شكرا سيد الرئيس. I want to ask something about the chairperson in my session, as Professor. Yeah, I think I guess you are the expert in the international environment. So my question is not directly related to the Ramsar treaties, but I just want to know about some questions concerning the international environment, especially from the perspective of the human security. I think that everybody knows about the former Secretary General of the United Nations, Kofi Annan, said that we now live in the times of the one mosquito kills the millions of the people in the world. So that the United Nations only focus on the military threat or something like that. So the security issues has to be shifted from the state security to the individual human rights security. But I think that the degradation of the environmental issues, is treated as the international threat, the international peace and security. But the state does not have the feasible position toward some connecting the environmental issues to the security issues. So, do you have any idea about how we can imagine the measures to relate with some of the environmental issues to the security issues? So, do you have any idea about this? So let me know about that.
Okay, are there any questions? Okay, not
Yeah, thank you very much. Very brilliant questions. Maybe I found difficulty to answer the question, but I will try. Okay, next, you mentioned about security, especially for the human security. So when we talk about environmental matter, actually that we have also to change our mindset here. That environment actually also has the right like a human being. So like the Professor Postner has some kind of essay. That's the title that does tree has a legal standing? Is it the tree has a legal standing? If yes, we're going to redesign the tree because the tree also has the right to live. But how the human being done to the trees here? They cutting the trees without any consideration how to make the conservation of the trees. They have such kind of freedom because they all think about the interest of human being. But if we also change our mind that environment also has the right, and what's going to represent the right, of course, is the environmental law have the legal standing to represent the environment. So if those area is not subject to or belonging to someone, so that become the right of the national organization here. The name is the environmental organization. Like I mentioned previously, well, he is one of the what we call as the national environmental organization. They have the legal standing to represent. And regarding the security of the human being in the global scheme, I refer to the climate change. What happened with the climate change? The surface of the sea level will increase, and this is already happened in Tuvalu. One of the islands has already submerged or sinking. So under international law, based on the Montevideo Convention, that one of the requirements to be called as a state has to fulfill 4 requirements. Maybe you have already know, but that's one of them is about the territory. So how if the territory has already sinking? So can we live under the water? So of course impossible. So this is become our problem in international level. How about the people here? Is it become the refugee? But the environmental refugee which is caused by the climate change impact will not be included in the Refugee Convention in 1951. Because in the Refugee Convention 1951, that people move to another countries because of the persecution. But this is not because of persecution, so there's the local here. So this we have also to consider the risk, some kind of problem in the environmental method and threat the security of the human being. So how we are going to work with this kind of situation? First, of course, that one that we can do that we are going to gather how we are going to reduce the emission. So each state has some kind of obligation because each state also contribute to the global warming. And the second one, if in the future happen about the climate change refugee, so starting now at the present, we are going to make a legal instrument. What kind of legal instrument can protect them? Are we going to give them the land? Of course, it's impossible. Also, we are going to give the land to other states because they have already lost the land. So, what kind of legal instrument? The first one, maybe we can make the definition of the convention in 1951, also including the refugee based on the climate change. But of course, this is very difficult also because we need all the members here to agree. So I think that's our problem here. And if you would like also to face together the problem and how to have some kind of solution, I think that environmental problem takes place in human being. If human itself doesn't want to change the mindset, that environment also is part of us, and the interest of human being also, we have to concern to protect the environment because the sustainability of the environment will affect the sustainability of the human being. I think that's all.
Thank you. Are there any more questions? I think that we have reached the end of our program. I'm sure we have all enjoyed the presentations and questions. Please join me in a round of applause for our panelists. As the moderator of session 4, I do express my sincere appreciation to all of distinguished participants, excellent speakers, and discussants. I will thank the staffs of the organizing committee for their great efforts and hard work, which made this conference very successful. Finally, I do wish that all participants have a memorable time in the conference. Now, I will declare that this session comes to the end. I will now turn the floor back to the main MC. Thank you for your cooperation.
Thank you very much. Big round of applause to our chairman and speaker for this last session. Ladies and gentlemen, to speed up our occasion this evening, I'd like to invite Professor Hikmahanto Juwana to conclude and act as the chairperson for this evening's session. To Professor Hikmahanto Juwana, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I'm chairing this session, not to report. I think I have my colleague Sepu to be here. Yeah. Yeah. Let us start with Sepu, and then afterwards we're going to have Noel to report.
Thank you very much. We have a full day. As followed by the previous practice we had in the DILA conference, we usually appoint it as the promoter of this program. So I'd like to ask Noel to make a short report to what we discussed today. Then we are going to have the announcements in terms of the paper guidelines into the future of the work. So,
Thank you, Professor Sokuli. Thank you for the opportunity to do this. Unlike everyone else, I had an invaluable task of sitting through every single presentation and furiously making notes. And Mr. Kembata said, it's quite a book. So please, could I ask for your indulgence for the next actually more than 5 minutes, 2 hours. Allow me to summarize the presentations made in today's conference. In fact, please allow me to go as far as the addresses. So we started our day with a recitation of the Quran and the Indonesian national anthem, followed by welcome addresses from the rector of the Islamic University of Indonesia, where the rector expresses warm welcome to the delegates and speakers and participants to the city of Yogyakarta. And the director also gave a very brief history of Universitas Islam Indonesia, highlighting UII's international accreditation and awards. And he said that international law is faced with various challenges, including the issues in Myanmar and Syria and the South China Sea. And the rector expresses gratitude to everyone for coming to Yogyakarta and look forward to future points of collaboration with the rest of the participants. He formally opened the conference with the gong, a traditional musical instrument of Indonesia. And then what followed was the signing of the memorandum of cooperation, conferment of souvenirs, and a group photo. The next welcome address was given by the chair of the Foundation of DILA, Professor Hikmahanto Juwana. Professor Hikmahanto again welcomed everyone to Yogyakarta, which he said is a city of culture, city of students, and a city of tolerance. He thanked DILA Korea for the support in organizing the conference and the local organizing committee, especially Dr. Dodi Setiawan Nur Herianto and his team for all the efforts in making sure that the conference runs smoothly. Professor Hikmahanto observed that the international community is dynamic and there is a new normal, quote unquote. And the topics covered in the conference, according to him, are both timely and important. And all the speakers are eminent experts in their specific areas of research interest. He also expressed the need for the establishment of DILA Indonesia, and he said this could be copied from the DILA Korea model. And for the purpose of spreading international law in Indonesia, and to allow scholars in Indonesia to have a voice and platform to discuss issues of international law, including the Asian Yearbook of International Law. In closing, Professor Hikmahanto gratefully acknowledged the attendance and presence of Professor Ko Swan Sik, a founder of DILA, and expresses optimism for a successful and productive conference. The third welcoming remarks was given by Professor Sokuli. And in his welcome remarks, Professor Sokuli spoke briefly about DILA Korea. He narrated his early participation in the DILA conferences commencing in 2006, which culminated in 2012 when he took over the chairmanship of DILA. Professor Lee said that in his capacity as chair, his priorities were basically twofold. First, to ensure that the association's flagship publication, the Asian Yearbook of International Law, is published on time. And secondly, the association's annual conference. He looked back at previous annual conferences of DILA and mentioned that DILA will be celebrating its 30th anniversary in 2019 with the theme Anatomy of State Practice in Asia in the last 30 years. And the 2019 DILA conference will be in Jakarta, Indonesia in October 2019. Professor Lee mentioned that he's proud to announce that the Asian Yearbook of International Law is now up to date and available in open access via the GRIL website. He also announced two big projects. The first one is the proposal to have a study group on the development of international law submitted to the International Law Association or ILA. And second is the proposal for a book submitted to GRIL, which was positively received, the DILA's Encyclopedia of Public International Law in Asia. In closing his welcome address, Professor Lee noted the participation of Korean delegates in the conference, and in fact, he introduced every single member of the Korean delegation. What followed was our keynote address, delivered by Professor Emeritus Ko Swan Sik, and he discussed Indonesia's contribution to the development of international law. He said that his special interest in state practice in Asia could be traced back to the categorization of state practice in Europe in the 1960s, when he was working in The Hague, Netherlands. DILA activities, he said, particularly the Asian Yearbook of International Law and the annual conference, happened in the 1980s. But it was necessary to set up a new foundation, and in the 1970s, the Asian Yearbook of International Law was established. He said that the emphasis on the systemic publication of the practice of the various states was placed as highly important. And from its very inception, there were three areas that were given particular focus. First was the section on state practice, whose focus was the presentation of facts that may lead towards the crystallization of norms. Second, a section on international political developments, which may influence the realization of a new international law. And finally, a section that lists the participation of states in multilateral treaties. That ended our first session before the coffee break, and then afterwards we had our first session chaired by Professor Sri Wortini, part one of the Historical Injustice and International Law section. In the first presentation given by Professor Soon Won Kim of Wonghwa University in Korea, Professor Kim commenced his presentation by clarifying the common misconception that Ispada is not the Chinese version of international law. He mentioned that while the Ispadan concept is the counterpoint of Western international law, it's not a total attack of Western international law. The Ispadan project, he said in a broad sense, shows that international law can be made by Asian countries, and it has two particular missions. The first is to rectify injustices from the hegemonic Western concepts of international law. And secondly, it advocates a grand vision of international law that supports and includes Asian values, ideologies, and principles of international law, including Confucianism. Professor Kim mentioned that the Ispadan project offers a fresh insight of international law that accounts for cultural and historical perspective, which may be extended to the rest of the world. He said that the Ispadan project is not just for Asian countries in response to the continued dominance of a Eurocentric view of international law. Professor Kim lamented that while historically Asian states have no capabilities to crystallize norms in international law, now we are seeing a growing phenomenon where Asian countries have the material capabilities to make a contribution in the progressive development of international law. The second paper in that panel was by Seung Jin Oh, a professor from London University, who discussed historical injustice and dispute settlement. Professor Ong commenced his presentation by stating that the point of his paper is not to deconstruct Western international law. He pointed out that the universalization of Western international law adopts a formalistic and flawed approach because it ignores the historical context and focuses on the context of legal positivism and intertemporal law. Professor Paul emphasized the time-specific aspect and the space-specific aspect of international law, which constrains law both in terms of time and space. He noted that Christian traditions and concepts embedded in international law assumes that international law is universal and applicable to all, and he echoed Oppenheim's observation, quote, that the civilized states are Christian states. And the professor argued that the encounters between the East and the West represent a clash of standard and ideologies, and it's a structural issue because it ignores the place and time context of international law. He closed his presentation with the imperative to recognize and hear minority voices and the need to change the Eurocentric view of international law, which ignores the contribution of Asian practices and states. The next one was given by C. Jin Oh, an assistant professor from Samyuk University in Korea. Professor Oh opened his presentation by stating that East Asia is politically and historically fragmented, despite being economically integrated. He then focused on the historian's task of unending dialogue with the past. And in this perspective, he said international law is a product of Western civilized states. However, before the arrival of the West, Professor Oh said that China already maintained a tributary system. And in his presentation, Professor Oh examined unequal treaties such as the Nanjing Treaty, which were obtained by threat or use of force, and the problems it presented during the post-war decolonization era. In fact, Professor Oh raised very provocative questions in the context of Bruce Cummings' comments on the first modern treaty. He said, what does modern, quote unquote, mean? Does modern mean fair or equal or in accordance with international law? And his concluding points, he emphasized that history itself is not just or unjust. However, he said law is based on justice, and global justice must promote peace and respect for human rights, and colonial issues in East Asia must be based on global justice. In the second session, I hope you're still awake. We had Christopher Kaysen as our chair, and it was part 2 of historical injustice and international law. Professor Soku Lee gave the first presentation, where he discussed territorial settlements in peace treaties. The focus of his presentation was actually the 1951 San Francisco Peace Treaty between Korea and Japan, which officially ended the American-led occupation of Japan. Professor Lee examined the issue of sovereignty of Dokdo or Takeshima from the perspective of the Japanese history of the San Francisco Treaty. So in the course of his research, Professor Lee draws his analysis from archival materials that shows previous drafts of the treaty. And in his presentation, he underscored the failure or shortcoming of the US as a drafter of this treaty for never really paying attention to the sovereignty based on historical titles. Professor Lee emphasized that the very political nature of the treaty and underscored the key point that unresolved territorial issues can cause tension between claimant states in the future. The paper by Sang-Min Shim looked at the North-South divide, and he argued that the concept of sustainable development arose out of concern for the plight of future generations to protect intergenerational concerns. He argued that it's rightful to differentiate between sustainable development and equality, and he said in the Asian context, there is a relationship between economic development and sustainable development. He said that the protection of the environment has also been used in the context of climate change protection. Professor Kim concluded that there's an emergence of a new approach based on cooperative principles that balances economic consideration and equality. The next paper by Yoon Park. The speakers in this paper asked the question whether the current regime is fair and effective. Oh, sorry, Yoon Park and Yoo Kim. The speakers asked the question whether the current regime is fair and effective, and whether fair trade is actually fair and correct. The speakers concluded that Asian countries need to make the current regime better by using international economic law, and developing countries in Asia can make a positive contribution through active participation in rulemaking initiatives. We had a third session following that, which was chaired by Tae Yoon Choi, a professor from Hanyang University School of Law. And first speaker was Agus Trianta, and Professor Trianta discussed the concept of Iya al-Mawat, which refers to the process of reviving abandoned or unutilized land. It's an Islamic concept. So Professor Trianta's presentation began by discussing land occupation in international law, and he discussed effective control, which has, in his words, two elements, intention and will. And he said that the occupation needs to be undertaken by the state and actual exercise of authority to the exclusion of other states. He said that the concept of acquisition of international law is similar to Iya al-Mawad. And he said that strategically land position is strategic land position in classical Islamic law, where land is protected and can be the object of leasing, conservation, and it must be utilized by the owner. He said Islam condemns trespassing, and land acquisition procedure in Islamic law can be done through sale and purchase, war, grant of government, among others. Professor Trianta concluded that the land needs to be used for beneficial purposes, or left unused or abandoned, it will be subject to occupation. The next one was given by Dr. Christopher Kaysen, where he began by stating that despite the fact that both countries, Korea and Indonesia, have almost attained independence at the same time. Indonesia gained its independence on August 17, Korea August 15, 1945. He found commonalities between the two has been difficult. So the focus of Dr. Kaysen's paper is the history and recent developments in gender discrimination in Korea and Indonesia. And in his presentation, he showed examples of discrimination in Indonesia. He discussed disparate impact, quote unquote, where a policy or document is neutral or patently not discriminatory, but has negative or discriminatory effect. Dr. Kaysen pointed out that it's very difficult to prove gender discrimination in employment. And in his research, he said he used the differences in wages and linked it to positive or intentional discrimination against women in Korea and Indonesia. He said that while statistics support this proposition, Dr. Kaysen's research did not address the important question of why this is the case, because he said cultural underpinnings are embedded in this question, and he avoided a Western perspective being imposed on the topic. The next one was given by Dr. Solim Setiawan Herianto, who changed the topic of his paper from refugee law to the application of international concepts in unmanned aerial vehicles and how they are regulated in international law. So he cited the Geneva Conventions and the Rome Statute as applicable. He also argued that while most states have the capacity to create unmanned weapons, their regulations should follow principles of proportionality and respect for international humanitarian law. In the last session, section 4, which we just finished, the chair was Director of Maritime Territorial Research Center for TMI, Daesung Yun, and the first speaker was Professor Sri Wardini. Professor Wardini commenced her presentation by providing a context of her research, which is the issue of global warming. She said Indonesia has violated 6 of their principles by the problem of forest burning. And Professor Wardini underscored the ecological importance of wetlands, which is recognized in the Convention on Wetlands of International Importance, or otherwise known as the Ramsar Convention. He said that the Ramsar Convention focuses on state-to-state operation. However, national implementation is very much needed in order for the convention to be effective. In her discussion, Professor Wardini emphasized that Indonesia is a state party to the Ramsar Convention and has actually designated 8 Ramsar sites. Professor Wardini identified challenges in the implementation of the Ramsar Convention in Indonesia, which includes land conversion, financial constraints, and awareness of civil society in the protection of wetlands. The next presentation was Nandam Sustrino, who talked about the topic of harmonization of WTO agreements in the national laws of Indonesia. He commenced his presentation by giving a brief overview of the WTO, including a discussion of 3 principles. And he stated that Indonesia ratified the WTO agreement as well as related agreements on trade, intellectual property, dispute settlement involving trade investment. Professor Sustrino's presentation focused on Law Number 7, 2014 on trade, and the Indonesian law. It's the Indonesian law which governs trade in general and highlighted inconsistencies and consistencies in the practice of Indonesia in the area of trade law. Thank you for your patience, and hopefully that's a good summary of all the papers.
2 short comments. It's much better than I expected. And likewise, some summaries a little bit slightly different with actual presentation, but as I has a pleasure to working with the lawyer, as he's as I introduced him, he's an exec editor of UII. The reason I asked him to make a summary for this special session today is that if the in particular this is applied for the Indonesian paper presenter speaker today. If I believe that either Hikmah or the Indonesian scholar will act as editing the papers from today's program. We are very happy to talking with the publication scheme with the group. But if because tomorrow we have a couple more papers from the Indonesian practice, but in comparison with the previous conference, there is the lacking of the topics. So in a sense that if the University of Indonesia, Islamic Indonesia and the Indonesian colleague of the Hikmah are happy to submit those papers to our the yearbook, we are very happy to have those papers as a special section to show that the state practice of international Indonesia. So I'm going to talk more in details about the future publication scheme with the Hikmah again, and then back to the issue to tomorrow. So it's a wonderful summary here, and it seems to me we have a wonderful day. So thank you.
Well, with that, I think we can wrap up our today's conference, and I would like to thank everyone here who have presented papers, and also we have brought questions and your participation. Thank you very much, and we hope to see you tomorrow. Thank you. Yes. We're going to have data. You're going to, yes. So.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for Professor Hikmahanto, Professor Lee, and also Mr. Bautista for the thorough yet very brief conclusion for our event today. Unfortunately, with that, we have come to the end of our session for today's event, but we are fortunate enough to continue tomorrow for the 2018 Dila Academy and Workshop on State Practice in International Law in Asian States in the year of 2017. I thank you very much for the kind participation and also the attention for making it through up to this point. And a short information that our session for tomorrow will start at 9 a.m. So we do hope that the attendance will be on time so that our event can run smoothly. On behalf of the committees, we'd like to apologize for any shortcomings. And we do hope to see you again tomorrow in the morning. And also our dinner will be commenced at 18:30, at 6:30. So you may go back to your room to have a short rest, and then we'll see you at dinner in the same place where we had lunch. Thank you very much. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Big round of applause for us.